So the Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan podcast caused quite the stir online, and a big part of it had to do with who's the woke right and who is not the woke right. We'll call this segment "Woke on First." Who's woke, who's not? So the guy who may have founded this term, he certainly popularized it. It's certainly attributed to him. Is a guy named James Lindsay, who in this interview with Michael Malice explains why he uses the term woke right. So we just have to set the stage a little bit here. Just a warning, folks. The audio and video in this segment is a bit tedious. These guys really know how to talk a lot and say very little. But we have no choice but to endure it. That is our cross to bear for the next few minutes.
Woke up to the true
All this
structure
we
of
did
reality,
for
and
thee.
it's
Yeah, exactly.
woke means having woke up to the true structure of reality, and it's actually structured by systems of power that generate oppression, and it's always this kind of like victim mentality is built right in. So it's in identity politics. So it's people like me who are oppressed, unless you have like the white guilt thing, and then it's like people like those poor victims are oppressed, with the empathy stick. And so woke means that. It doesn't mean left. It doesn't mean necessarily believes in Marxist stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that you care too much about race, although that's often implicated as part of the structural beliefs about reality. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you're pro-trans. It means that you believe that there is a oppressor-based structure to social reality that colors your entire interpretation of reality. Then you could add one further thing, because the woke actually do believe there's a duty of conscience that comes with this. The belief about oppression is that oppression is a dynamic. It's not that there's oppressor and oppressed as two separate things. They are two poles in a dynamic of oppression. So oppression creates an oppressed that's being done by an oppressor. So they're intrinsically linked. And the belief, at least from Marxism, from page 2, I guess, of the Communist Manifesto, the main body of it, is explicitly that this is the engine. This is what it actually means for history to move. The entirety of human history is the history of the antagonism of classes. And so the oppressor versus oppressed is actually there in that first paragraph. So woke means that you woke up to this. Okay, fine.
Okay. Well, now, then he gets into what woke right is. So as you can see, this is where the cultural Marxism point comes from, because they're not saying that it's literally Marxism. They're saying that because Karl Marx felt that class conflict was permanent, perpetual, and inevitable, therefore the wokesters are applying that paradigm of permanent and unavoidable conflict to other areas. Race, right? Religion, sexuality, etc.
Yeah.
etc. Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned, so when I first started seeing this kind of conversation, which was not really that long ago in the great scheme of things, because liberalism, leftism for my entire life had been predicated on the idea of a kind of liberal universalism where everyone's equal and, color blindness. When I saw all of these conversations that were very much the opposite, that it's racist to not emphasize race. I mean, that's in complete contradiction to, literally over a century of thinking about race relations. I didn't understand it. And with the trans conversation and gender, I was like, what the fuck is this? So because these conversations were being so heavily suppressed, it was very hard to find any books that analyzed it in any way other than reinforcing it. So his book, I forget the name of the co-author, it was a woman co-author. He wrote a book, Cynical Theories. That was the first thing I ever read explaining what the hell this even was. I gotta say, I've learned a lot more about it since, and it was not a bad primer on where all of this came from. But it's another example of what we were saying about Rogan and Peterson. Because at that time, look, the academics are usually liberals. So the only people who were qualified really to get into Butler and all of the different progenitors of wokeness and critical theory, which is really the focus of the book, it tended to be libs. Like, that book is very much written from the perspective of traditional liberals aghast at this movement that had that claimed to be an evolution of what they believed in, but I think properly was seen by many as a poor substitute and really a contradiction of many of the most idealistic beliefs of liberalism. Um, Over time, I've seen Lindsay since. Over time, he went crazy. Over time, he went. They all did. They all
Well,
did, because there was, if they want to make a living, they can't make a living among the libs. They're ejected, and I think once you go into that space, it's one road leads to another road. You have to start catering to the audience that you have, and I think it's easy to go that way when the people on the other side are trying to destroy you. So why not just embrace this ideology?
well, but this is why to use wokeness as a pejorative and to call it a form of Marxism is to play hide the ball, in my opinion, with the fundamental, undeniable paradigm of society and societal conflict, which is, yes, class based oppression. People with power seek to hold it and put their foot on the necks of people without power. And in capitalist societies, the source of power is wealth. And so it's not some postmodern, weird talk to actually say that actually, no, Marxism is, in my opinion, an accurate critique of power dynamics within a society. Now, what they want to do is they want to play hide the ball with that. They don't want to admit that such power dynamics exist. That whether you are a right-wing neoliberal or a right-wing fascist, they all deny the inevitable power struggle between the haves and the have-nots. They must, because their whole view of society is predicated upon the idea that those imbalances are very easily transcended through liberty and market forces, right? So they have to just deny that, and they have to kind of smear Marxism by equating it with wokeness, with, oh, these people who are just obsessed with identity politics and looking for oppression where there is none, right? That's where they have to take that. Now here is where he goes.
However, there is part of that just on an analysis basis. This is where a lot of our Marxist friends will get upset at the term cultural Marxism, rightly so. But did they take some DNA from Marxism to create the critical theory? Yeah, like that core idea of the world being divided between oppressed and oppressors. Yes, did they take that basic theory? And this is why corporations loved this. They took the economics out of it and they put identity in its place.
Well,
So
yes,
now the oppressed and the oppressor are all identity groups.
Well, they took something very material and made something very abstract with it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's what they did. And so, okay, so that's where the cultural Marxism thing comes from. Now, here he goes on to describe more specifically the woke right.
What does woke right mean? Well, we often think of it as woke left. I've been actually being much more precise for a couple of years and saying woke woke Marxism to describe what I'm talking about on the left, because I think it is derived from Marxism. So woke right are the basic definition is going to be people who act like the woke, although this is a very weak definition. People who act like the woke, same tactics, same victim mentality, same identity politics, same poor me, same, kind of very instrumental use of language, very instrumental use of knowledge, of concepts, of lies. That means justify the end. So lying and smearing and canceling and struggle sessions are all on the table in order to gain ideological growth or consensus, but also to gain obviously power. And so, but that do so using so-called right-wing traditionalist values.
Okay, so you get kind of an idea of what he means by the woke right. We won't dissect that any further for now because we have plenty more to go. But Jordan Peterson references Lindsay in a rant egged on by Rogan about the quote-unquote woke rights. Now, if you thought the last word salad was tough, wait till you get a taste of this one.
Virtualization has enabled the psychopaths.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, well,
without a doubt.
That's a terrible thing because the psychopathic types, they're always the death of everything. Like I'm seeing this come up on the right now. So imagine this. I've been working on a new theory of political psychopathology, and I like it quite a lot.
Is this where the term the woke right comes in?
Yeah, well, Lindsay is pointing at that, but he hasn't got the diagnosis exactly right. So it isn't woke. That's not the issue. It's not exactly.
I think
one
what
level.
they're talking about is like similar types of behavior.
He is talking about that. Yeah, no. What he's pointing.
Woke just lets you clarify in your head. Oh, it's like that.
Yeah, but the problem is
it's like Antifa.
Yeah, absolutely. But the problem is that argument is predicated on the claim that the ideas are the problem, like the woke ideas, for example, on the right or the left. But that's not the problem. The problem is that 4 to 5% of the population, something like that, is cluster B, that's the DSM-5 terms, histrionic, narcissistic, antisocial, psychopathic, or they have dark tetrad traits. They're Machiavellian, they're sadistic. That's about 4%. Okay, so the question is, how do these people maneuver? And the answer is they go to where the power is, and they adopt those ideas, and they put themselves even on the forefront of that.
Right.
But the ideas are completely irrelevant.
Right.
All they're doing is they're the Pharisees. They're the modern version of the Pharisees. They're the people who use God's name in vain, right?
Another not so veiled shot at the Christ is King people, at the anti-Zionist right-wingers, because to Jordan Peterson, and I would assume to James Lindsay, the anti-Israel right are the woke right, because they see the world through oppressor and oppressed. Well, I'm sorry, that fucking applies in a lot of cases, especially to Israel-Palestine. This is what I mean. Their whole worldview is to hide the ball about that. They don't want to acknowledge that power imbalance is a real thing. They want to, they must create in the public mind that power is temporary, and it can very easily be transferred through cooperation, through free markets, right? Through liberalism at the end of the day. The idea of permanent conflict is very threatening to them because that leads to revolution. And they don't want to give any credibility to that way of viewing the world. That's why the Petersons and the Lindsays, they consider the anti-Israel right to be the woke right. So James Lindsay, Jordan Peterson, there are psychopaths on both sides. Normal people, yeah, obviously, so what? Woke right. So here's James Lindsay again, tweeting in response to this Rogan episode. How dare he say this? Oh my God, Jordan Peterson is the real psycho. He's bad for us and our movement. So see, in their vision of things, the woke right are the ones who, in this case, in this specific case of Israel-Palestine, accurately identify a permanent and inherent power imbalance. And they don't like that. So they call them woke. As we'll see in a minute, it's actually the Zionist right who are the wokest of them all. Under the I will admit, elusive definition of the word. This is the kind of thing, this is one of the things that's difficult about doing this segment, is a lot of people rightfully argue that woke as a pejorative is a bastardization of what woke actually means. Right. And now this is like a bastardization of a bastardization, right? Because now you have two sides arguing over which bastardized version of the word applies to their group. And in doing so, they bastardize it even further.
Yeah, not to go spinning off into a tangent, but I have pretty much zero patience for language evolves, and that's bad, and the original meaning was different, so you can't use the word. Shut the fuck up. Okay, I don't ever want to hear you use the word slave again, because it's based in Slav, because there were so many Slavic slaves. Okay?
Yeah, no, but
you would have to throw out half the vocabulary if you want to go back to every word that meant something else. Yeah, woke meant one thing. Now it means another. A word means what people commonly think it means. It doesn't matter what it used to mean. It's interesting if you want to trace it back to get an understanding from a sociological or cultural perspective. how that word evolved and its meaning changed to people, it doesn't mean what it meant 50 years ago. And that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't have to. Are you saying there's no language to describe the thing that it originally meant to describe? You absolutely have to use that word. And if so, use a new one. Like, that's the language. It drifts, linguistic drift.
I mean,
There's nothing you can do about it.
In this case, yeah, I mean, it is more of just like a subset of people who started using this word over and over and over again.
Sure, and it came to mean something
yeah.
else.
But yeah, so
that's the history of language. It happens.
Yeah, but now, but this is how that happens too, isn't that? Now you're going to have a debate within that section of people who are saying, "Well, no, you're actually woke. No, you're woke. You're woke." So this is what this turns into now. The woke right is coming in hot. So this is a Zionist saying the woke right is coming in hot. We got to call out anti-Semitism from every angle because it's all around us. So this is extremely confusing.
Guys, so I've been sitting with this for a while, and I just need to say it. So we've spent so much time fighting anti-Semitism on the far left, which is incredibly obvious. We've seen this bleed into the Democratic Party like crazy. You know, we keep seeing the Democrats in Congress and in Senate consistently voting against Israel. But right now, the woke right is coming in hot. And look, guys, I back Trump. I am beyond grateful for the work that he is doing right now to finally enforce real consequences for anti-Semitism, pulling federal funding from these universities, holding these terrorist supporters accountable. This is what we have waited for far too long. But we have Tucker Carlson, we have Joe Rogan, we have Candace Owens. These people that are loudly pushing these very dangerous narratives like minimizing the threat of Iran, whitewashing Qatar, mocking Israel. I am not talking about just a few one-off comments. This is a pattern. And these are people who have called out the squad for their radical ideologies, but now they are repeating some of the exact same anti-Semitic talking points. Suddenly, Iran's not a threat. Suddenly, Israel's the aggressor and Qatar's a partner.
Okay, so you see what she's doing. She's calling them the woke right for the same reason that Jordan Peterson is and that I'm assuming James Lindsay would. So Nico House.
Would you get that high from a Flavor Flav garage sale?
Yeah. Nico House says, "Lady, you are the woke right. Learn what words mean before you use them." Yeah, exactly. And here to explain that a little more is Glenn Greenwald, who got a question about this, and he gives what I think is an absolutely perfect answer. So he was asked about Constantine Kissen labeling, the Tuckers and the Candace Owens, the sort of more anti-Israel right, as woke. Here's how he answers this. This goes on for a few minutes, but it's worth watching.
Carl Malone, and he asks, what do you think of Constantine Kissen's response by declaring Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and maybe Dave Smith as the woke right?
I'm so happy to have this question. Honestly, I was thinking about doing a show on this. I just don't like doing segments about people who I don't think deserve full segments. It's a good way to get attention into
Sassy
that
Glenn.
kind of conflict and controversy sells, but I just don't regard Constantine Kissen as sufficiently noteworthy to do like a waste of segment on him. But since you asked, the insult phrase that they have come up with to talk about Tucker and Candace is the woke right. And this is why it's so hilarious and such projection and so ironic, because for years, people like Constantine Kissen, the only reason we know his name is he was part of that like anti-woke faction that arose after Me Too, but especially the Black Lives Matter protest, like Barry Weiss. They all branded on like, oh, we're such heterodox thinkers. We reject the woke ideology of the left. And the thing they hated most about the woke ideology of the left, according to them, was that it was all based on victimhood. It was all based on group identity. It was all based on this claim that the United States and the world is filled with all kinds of bigotry and all kinds of discrimination that is directed at Black people or Muslims or women or trans people or whoever. And this was all crybaby behavior, according to this anti-woke faction that emerged. This is just a left-wing attempt to turn themselves into victims, to whine constantly, to claim that they were the victims of systemic discrimination. That was what mostly the critique of the woke left was that it was like identity-based victimhood narratives, and at the same time that they were demanding to be shielded from ideas that they dislike based on the grounds that it made them unsafe. And that was mocked as being childlike. Okay. Now, over the last year, we have heard nothing. Like, the primary narrative has been from the pro-Israel right, of which Constantine Kissen is a part, exactly all the things that they have claimed define the sinister parts of the woke left. Oh, I'm the group of which I'm a member, Jews, are now the unique target of violent bigotry. We're the ones that are the victims. We are unsafe. We need protections. We're not even safe to walk on the streets in Europe anymore because people hate us so much. We can't even go on campus because we hear these genocidal chants that need to be stopped and the people on them need to be punished. That's the woke right. The woke right are the people who believe that who identify themselves as part of their demographic group, in this case Jews, and who have created this narrative that comes exactly from the woke left that they've spent the last however many years mocking, that their group is the true victim group, that their group is confronting this dangerous form of hatred and prejudice and discrimination and bigotry, that there's all these things going around them that make them unsafe, feeling unsafe on campuses. They need more protection from administrators. Administrators should be fired for not acting to protect them enough. To call critics of Israel the woke right is 180 degrees the opposite of the reality. And the people that are the ones that are constantly engaging in group-based self-discrimination and victimhood narratives, namely since October 7th, pro-Israel Jews and their supporters, are the ones that have been peddling what had been defined as the woke left, the core ideas and tactics of the woke left forever. The woke right are the Constantine Kissens of the world, who believe that, oh, it just so happens that the group into which I was born, with which I most identify, we're the real victim
All
group.
of these other guys, when they do it, it's just
whiny, petulant.
But this time is actually
this
true.
is the real bigotry against me and my group. And that's the bigotry that the government and administrators need to act to protect.
Which is also
exactly. And that gets to the key distinction here between what James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson describes as the woke right and what the actual woke right is. The Lindsays and the Peterson, these are conservatives who want to obscure the existence of power imbalances and power dynamics. And so they see identification of power imbalances as woke. What is actually woke, as Greenwald says, is not simply the recognition of power imbalances, but to put yourself at the center of that, to make yourself a unique victim of that, and to insist that you, as a member of a particularly victimized group, have special rights and privileges that other groups, oppressed or not, do not have. And that describes to a T the pro-Israel right. Obviously, we're going to do a story later in the stream. The NIH is withholding grants from schools that boycott Israel.
It's wokeness on steroids.
Right. It's not the recognition of conflict. It's to place yourself as the most vulnerable member within a conflict and insist that the world walk on eggshells around you. That is what wokeness is. And that is, of course, the Zionist playbook from A to Z. From A to Z. They are the woke right. And so there is an insidiousness about obscuring that, and there's another insidiousness about claiming all recognition of oppression and power imbalance as woke. And that's what they do. Well, if you're pro-Palestine, it means you think that the Palestinians are oppressed. That makes you woke. No, that makes you that makes you woke in the real sense of the word. That makes you awake, right? And that's why I would argue that, yeah, sometimes the jujitsu of wordplay does matter a little bit, because to actually be awake to reality is not to be woke in the pejorative sense.
Well, their idea of woke very much applies to them and always has. I mean, their whole movement, if you want to call it that, is built around grievance and the idea that they're being oppressed by liberal ideology, right? They've been left out. They've been oppressed. It's just wokeness for white people.
Right, exactly.
You know, I mean, that's all it is, really. I mean, if you look at the South Africa thing, all of a sudden these white farmers are needing of special protection. You know, it's not that they're against wokeness; they just don't like it being applied to blacks and gay people and trans people. They love wokeness being applied to Israelis and white people.
Exactly. So the final verdict
Safe
is, of course,
spaces, all that. We
Right.
just saw that with Nancy Mace.
Of course.
She felt so threatened. So where's all the commentary from Trigonometry about how Nancy Mace is a snowflake who needs
Right.
to be driven out of Congress? Why
Right.
aren't they all over that?
Well, you know who did call her out for that is Matt Walsh, and
Matt
that's
Walsh
why I'm
did,
saying
yeah.
there is a rift here that's emerging, and it's all emerging around this Israel
Well,
issue because
Matt Walsh also called out that rabbi who literally
right.
did the Ibram X. Kendi thing and said it's not enough to be against not be anti-Semitic. You have to be anti-Semitic.
Well, this is I mean, and there is this rift happening now, and it's happening because this Israel issue is just it's too severe and too ever present to ignore. And so it's forcing these rifts. And now you can actually say, hey, who among you is acting the wokest? It's certainly not the Candace Owens people. It's the people like the woman in the car. Yeah, no, we need special rules to protect my group because my group is uniquely vulnerable. That's woke in the parlance of our times.
Please clap.